For weeks, the country has been gripped by the disappearance of Gabby Petito, the blogger who never came back home after a cross-country trip with her fiance. And the case is shining a light on domestic abuse all across the country. So Gina has more on that. Gina.
Yeah, good morning, Scotty. And such an important issue at this point, especially in light of Gabby's death. At this point, though, we don't know for absolute certain that this was a case of domestic violence just yet. However, her boyfriend, Brian Laundrie, is a person of interest, and you've probably seen that body camera video showing police confronting the couple after someone called officers saying that there had been a domestic dispute between the two of them. So if you saw something, would you know how to recognize the abuse, and would you know when and how to say something? Joining us this morning to talk about the signs of domestic abuse is Steven Miller. He's with the Chrysalis shelter. Steven, good morning to you. The work that you guys do at Chrysalis is so important and is so vital for our community. So first of all, let me just say thank you. But second of all, I want to dive right into this conversation. You know, when you see bruises, that seems like an obvious sign of some kind of a domestic abuse. But talk to me about the other forms of domestic violence that we really should be looking out for as far as the signs are concerned in our loved ones.
Sure. Thanks, Gina. Well, we know domestic violence takes many different forms, but it does feature some common elements and follows a pattern of progression. Typically, what we see first is emotional abuse. This can take many different forms. It starts with name calling, belittling, criticism, really anything that makes the victim feel small. And from there, it progresses into control. So this is where isolation takes place. It can involve restriction from access to family and friends or finances. And from there, it really progresses into the most dangerous form, which is physical violence. But it's important for everyone to know that even once it's reached that form, that there are options and there's places to go, and people like Chrysalis here to help.
You know, Steve, I think it's fair to say that, relationships are hard. And at some point or another, we've all had some kind of a disagreement or fight with our partners. There maybe has been words that were exchanged that we all regret, or, something that has been unkind. So how do you know when it's crossed over into the world of domestic violence versus just a terrible fight?
It's a really good question, and it's really hard to say because every case is so different. But I will say, if you suspect a loved one maybe in a case of domestic violence, there are some do's and don'ts that we encourage at Chrysalis. It can be a very difficult conversation, but we practice trauma-informed care, which is a series of methods and techniques that helps broach that initial conversation with someone when it can be a pretty difficult thing to talk about. So one of the things we encourage people to do is to be there, listen, and ask questions. One of the long-term effects of trauma, particularly in the DV space, is making the abnormal normal. And sometimes getting someone just to talk about their relationship, verbalizing it can almost set off a light bulb moment where they realize that this isn't okay and this isn't normal. I also would encourage people to always be patient. We know from research that it takes usually around 7 attempts before someone is comfortable leaving a dangerous situation. And we encourage friends, family, and loved ones to, again, be patient, know that this is a very difficult decision for a lot of people to make, and it's a process.
And Steve, as I've watched, just some of the work that you guys have done at Chrysalis, I know that it's so important to provide continued support because so often people who find themselves in an abusive situation, they love that person and they want the abuse to stop. So blame and shame is something we absolutely, as a friend, as a loved one, should not resort to, yeah?
Absolutely. We highly encourage people to avoid blaming and shaming, and also avoid ultimatums. Like I said, with trauma-informed care, one of the things that we encourage is providing options. When someone feels like they have options, they have hope. And so one of the most important things, again, is just to be patient and be a part of what we call safety planning. This can be where you encourage someone to check off some of the logistical boxes. When someone does decide it's time to leave, it can be an urgent or sometimes emergency situation. And having little things like making sure the car is full of gas, cell phone is always charged, having cash on hand, or having a central place where you can meet a friend, family, or loved one. Those little things go a long way in making it ultimately successful for
That's
someone to get away.
such great advice. We want to wrap things up here, Steven, but before we do that, maybe somebody at home is watching right now. They're afraid to even, put on their browsing history the fact that they've looked up Chrysalis or some other help for domestic violence. Can you quickly tell everybody, if you're in trouble, how do they reach you guys at Chrysalis?
Yeah, so you can reach us 24/7 on the phone at 602-944-4999 or on the web at noabuse.org.
Very good. Steven Miller, thank you so much. I really appreciate this conversation.